So we carry on a conversation about how to be watchful of things in the media and where they're taking us, and how much to pay attention and how much not to pay attention.
Okay, well, I just want to say this to start with. That the sole agenda of the media is to plant a seed of darkness here. If you understand how the human mind works, it's an envisioning tool. We need a vision, either a vision of paradise, a vision of light, a vision of peace, or what the media is trying to plant in our mind is a vision of hell on earth, a vision of suffering, a vision of dystopia. And so the main job of the media right now, what it's doing, as I said earlier, it's been harnessed pretty much entirely by evil. It wants to implant very, very detailed vision of misery and pessimism and doom. It wants to implant that in our minds, because once you believe that vision, and once you believe that's the destination, then you will you'll play out the drama that leads you in that direction. You will, and by your very resistance, because people don't understand this, but the fact that you fear something happening, you're actually giving that vision energy. So the energy of fear is just energy, and so when you're afraid of something happening, you're actually giving energy to the thing that you're afraid of happening. So the media is putting this very detailed image in our minds of dystopia, misery, and great suffering, and it's making us really dread that coming true. But the fact that we're dreading it and really fearing it and resisting it, well, not only is it making us resist the future, because you're not going to want to move forward if you think that as you move forward in life you're getting closer and closer to this vision of misery and suffering and dystopia. Not only does it stop us embracing life, it makes us resist life, which is a very bad thing, but it also it gets us using our energy to feed. We're feeding this vision that the media is planting in our mind. We're feeding it with our fear and our dread and our anxiety. And so the really important thing to understand is that this vision is not true. If you think how much money is in the media, think how many millions, perhaps billions of dollars, pounds is spent on the images getting from that screen, the images that go on those screens, the advertising, the movies, the films, how the TV programs, everything, the video games, how much money is invested in trying to get this picture, these certain ideas into your mind. It's because it's a hypnosis industry, and the media is trying to hypnotize you to believe a dark vision, and people are buying it. People are thinking, obviously 1984, people have read 1984 and they're thinking, oh, this is where it's all heading now. The media is succeeding. If you've got any negative emotions, if the media is making you feel any negative emotions, it's got you. It's succeeded in manipulating you emotionally, because that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to manipulate you emotionally, confuse you, but most importantly, it's trying to implant this vision of a dark future in the minds of all the people, so that they stop living in peace, so they don't open themselves to God's gifts, God's beauty. Because, as I said, the media is almost entirely in the hands of evil, and evil does not want people moving closer to God. It wants people drowning in a sea of misery. So it's using the media to hypnotize people.
It's true. I heard that there's so many more people have committed suicide since this whole COVID thing kicked off. It's from being locked down and the fears of the future. And apparently these statistics have gone sky high for particularly young people committing suicide too. Because I guess perhaps they feel hopeless about the future.
Well, if you can understand that the media for many, many years, many decades, has been dropping jigsaw puzzle pieces, bit by bit, and now it's come to this point where it's putting those pieces together for us in our mind. So it's very clever psychological manipulation, so that people are so sure that certain things are going to happen, and there's this vision of the future, this bleak, horrific, cruel, evil dystopia where people are just suffering in misery and being tortured. This vision has been almost very successfully implanted in the minds of millions of people, and you can actually, if you've read certain books like 1984 and other dystopian novels, and you can understand why people are wanting to end their lives, because it's horrific. I mean, it's a really bleak vision, and in my earlier years, I I would give a bit too much attention to these people call them conspiracy theories, but these dark visions of where evil wants to lead us. And I would feel what that would do to my body. It would feel like poison in my body when I'd contemplate these dark visions of the future. It really would feel like poison in my body. And that's what the media wants. It's not so bothered about its main agenda is not to imprison us physically or to oppress us physically, because we'll do that ourselves. And people are very intelligent. The people who own the media and the people who are orchestrating the messages in the media know that humanity build its own prison in here. And so that's why the media is a mind manipulation tool to get you thinking in certain ways, and all of them are negative. None of them are the ways that God wants us to think. None of them show us the light. So everyone's looking for the light. People want the light. Of course, all our hearts want the light. Everyone should stop looking at the media. Just stop looking there.
I was just going to ask you that. Is there any point, is there anything useful there, to help us navigate these
Well,
storms?
I mean, there are certain people who have got a good heart, intelligent people, people who really do care, who very obviously care about people and are trying to alleviate suffering in the world, who have a lot of wisdom to share. So I'm not saying you should just ignore them because they could be helpful. But you've got to be very careful that when you open the door, like when you just go into YouTube to look for one of these people, then there's a whole flood of other negative stuff. So you have to be very disciplined not to let any of that other stuff into your mind. So if there's someone you want to listen to or someone who helps you, then be very disciplined not to look at other stuff. Don't look at the clever manipulations that are, it's everywhere. I mean, you mentioned being wise as serpents. The manipulation is to the nth degree in every facet of the media. It's so difficult to see where it's coming from, because it looks like it's just people sharing their stuff, especially on YouTube. You just think, oh, it's just people sharing their stuff, but actually, it's actually carrying darkness. And even if people are genuine and they're just sharing what's on their heart, if they've been influenced by darkness, if the messages of darkness have gotten into their minds, and they're just making videos about how they feel, then that'll also influence you in a negative way. It'll also they'll be like a vehicle for the darkness unwittingly. They may not have dark intentions, or they may not be trying to mislead people, but if they've been touched by the dark messages and they're making videos themselves, then so you have to guard yourself against these things and really focus in on what brings you more light, what makes your heart open to God, what is it that gives you hope and inspires you and brings the light into your mind and makes you stronger and more positive. So you've got to be very, very careful with the media, extremely careful. And in my opinion, it's safer to avoid it because there's so many pitfalls and traps. It's safer to avoid it and just spend more time in nature, because I think God instructs us through the natural world. And if you were to spend all the time in nature that you spend on social media, on YouTube, on Facebook, on anything, if you were to spend that time in nature instead, then in a week's time you would have a completely different view of the world. You'd be more open to God. You'd have a greater sense of God's reality, God's truth, because nature.
You might have better discernment too.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing I noticed, that if I do watch the news and I watch even just a few reports, I start to feel very confused, and about what's true. I have no idea what's true, because they can be very conflicting as well. So then, when I go back to my garden or I just talk to God, and everything becomes clear again. And I realise what's important.
Like I said earlier, anything that makes you feel anxious, afraid, worried, is you don't need it.